beard though. You definitely rock the beard. So
Thank you so much.
I'm Santa when I grow out my beard.
Yeah, I could see that. My dad is definitely Santa with the beard.
But the hat makes it cool.
Yeah. All right. I think we are going live. All right, we are live and we are going, and everybody in YouTube land got to see our talk about the beard and the hair. So that's great. It caught all that. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining in and being with us here live or watching the recording. We are happy to be here with this teaching. I'm super excited about the topic that we're going to be covering today. We're going to be talking about virtual presentations, and wow, what a topic for the day. And Bill has some fantastic content that he's going to share with us. And this is really what I would call a virtual presentation system. He's going to share a 6-step process, a checklist that you can go through. And actually, he's going to make a PDF available to you that you can use as you're creating your presentations, as you're creating your sales pitch, as you're getting ready to talk to your team. Maybe you're in leadership and you have a team and you want to make sure that your communication is clear and effective. This is what this PDF is going to help you do. So we have some information that we'll make available to you before this this training is over. Real quick, a background on why we're doing this. A few weeks ago, I went live and on YouTube and gave a presentation. Bill happened to be on there listening in, watching live on YouTube. And he called afterwards. We're friends. And so he called me and said, hey, can I share some things with you to up-level your live presentation? And I said, absolutely, right? We want to be constant learners. That's why you're on this YouTube channel right here. And I told him, absolutely, I want to hear what you have to say, especially because I'm giving this presentation the following day, a paid gig, and I have to do it in about a third of the time. So any insights you have would be fantastic. And he shared this process with me, this system with me that he's going to share with you today. And it absolutely up-leveled my communication. It up-leveled my presentation. That very next day, it was a brand new client. The client said the presentation was fantastic, and he wanted to bring me in again to speak to his team and share some different material with them. So this works. It's going to up-level your communication. Influential people are good communicators. And so this is something that you really want to listen into, take some notes, and then know that you can get the PDF downloaded before we're done today. So with that, Bill, I'm giving it over to you. Share just real briefly why you are such a great communicator with your experience, maybe a little brief background of your experience, where you're coming from, what you do now, and then just launch right into this training for us.
Sounds great, Drew. It's awesome to be here. I have been a public speaker for over 40 years. I started very, very young, and I will confess I was not very good. No one's great, right? The first time that they do something. Now, you might have natural giftings, natural propensity towards certain things and talents, but all of those need to be honed and they need to be improved. And as you said, leveled up, Get them up. Let's increase them. So with that kind of a background, I've done a lot of speaking in front of crowds. I've done a training for public speakers and helping them become better communicators. I've worked with teachers, I've worked with trainers and public speakers. I enjoy public speaking, but one of the major pivots that everyone who's been a public speaker for any length of time is having to make in this season we're in today is we're having to make the adjustment to virtual presenting. Mm-hmm. Now, companies have been doing this for years. Companies have been giving presentations. We've all dozed through some of those. We've all sat in the boardroom and thought, could this have been an email? Anything but this. We've all been there. Maybe we've been asked to step up and give a presentation, and we had a sleepless night the night before, and we We just were panicky, sweaty palms, the whole thing. And maybe we had a 30-minute presentation and we did one of two things. We expanded that 30-minute presentation into an hour and drove everybody nuts, or we finished it in 10 minutes because of our rapid fire pace, just trying to get it over. All of those things basically forgets why we're doing what we're doing. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today that makes all of us better presenters, is when we remember what the reason is for the presentation, right? So,
Great.
it helps focus us. Right now, I'm still a public speaker. I am still a trainer and a coach. My company, the Strongbridge Group, we train leaders and their teams to successfully navigate transitional seasons and disruptions, which is very relevant right now.
Absolutely.
Without any doubt. And, this is one of the things I tell people: transitions and disruptions are inevitable. Being prepared is a choice, and
That's
we
good.
can help. So that's a little background on me. And whenever you're ready, we'll just jump in and we'll talk about these 6 things. I'm gonna begin with some basic elements that we all need to keep in mind. The difference between the public presentation and the virtual one.
Yeah, and those basic things that you're going to share, housekeeping items that you're going to share. One of them, I want to share real quick. I was doing some research on what's out there already on YouTube with virtual presentations, and trying to figure out, how we can bring something unique, something different. And there was one particular video where the gal sharing, how to do a virtual presentation. It was a very short video, but right over her shoulder is a curling iron. Right, it was already cluttered. It was cluttered behind her, and then there was a curling iron right over her shoulder. I thought, oh my goodness. So you can have the best content, but there are some things that are going to make you look a little less professional, right? If you have them going on in the background.
Well, we've all seen, I'm sure, since people are here watching this on YouTube, there are so many examples of Zoom calls gone wrong, right? Where someone looked appropriate for the call until they stood up to go grab something to drink, and everyone realizes they're not dressed appropriately. I mean, those things are everywhere. And we'll hit on some of that stuff that is a big deal when we talk about virtual presentations, because in any presentation, we need to understand that human beings have varying attention spans and comprehension levels, and we need to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
People do one of two things. They either try to get too much information disseminated, or there's not enough to make it worth the time of everyone gathering. And so, but being aware of that attention span issue is important, because we want to eliminate all the unnecessary distractions that we can.
Absolutely.
And we can't deal with what they're dealing with in their environment, but we can at least work to make sure our environment is not adding unnecessary distractions.
Yeah. And one last thing I do want to say before we jump into these things: Bill's going to give you a list of things to up level and to make your presentation fantastic. As far as those housekeeping items, then he's going to walk into that process. If you do the process right, and you follow those steps that he's going to give you and that we're going to share with you in the PDF, and how to get the PDF is now in the description below, so you can have access to that. But if we do everything to make our presentation clear and effective, people will work with you on the technical difficulties. We're doing a live feed right now. I have a YouTube channel that I follow called Video Influencers. They're huge. They're fantastic. And they were doing a training on video going live on YouTube, and they had technical difficulties doing it. It's just part of the world that we live in. That's okay. But if you do your homework on how to present clearly and effectively, people will forgive those technical difficulties that you might have along the way, and that we might have today. We're going live, so you never know what's going to happen. But with that, okay, we need to jump into this. People want to hear what you have to say, and I'm interested to hear it and learn it all over again. So go for it.
All right, great, Drew. One of the things that we do need to know, and this is to context, we are in a window of time where people are very forgiving right now, especially the areas you mentioned, the technical glitches. For one, we don't always have control of that, right? So, and people are aware of that. More people are using this type of medium now than ever before. Now, I would guess that the people who are on watching today either are asked to regularly do presentations to their team or their organization or their business or to clients, and or they are public speakers or they want to be public speakers. And so now making sure you have that additional skill set to transition, to pivot, to being able to do that virtually as well. So let me just give you, let's dive right in. Let me give you some things that I consider the basics. These are things that are just some basic guidelines that you need to keep in mind when you're getting ready. This is all supposed to happen before you go live. Okay. Are we clear on that? Okay. So
Yes.
here's the first. If possible, you should use a direct Ethernet connection to your computer, laptop, or whatever you're using, if that's possible, rather than being dependent on wireless. Here's the reason. Wireless is rarely ever constant. It is fluctuating. It's affected by, if you're working from home, it's affected by how many people in your neighborhood right now are online. So your speed, your bandwidth, all of those things. It can also be affected by how many people in your home are streaming stuff right now while you're trying to do your presentation. So if you can connect directly to your router, or if your house happens to be wired with network capabilities in certain rooms, go to that room to do your presentation, plug in directly. Worst case, it's worth the investment in a 50-foot or 100-foot Ethernet cable to get to your router and plug in directly. You will be much happier with the results. There'll be fewer glitches, fewer hiccups in the stream and in the feed. Now, let's be honest, those things are distracting. When you're listening to someone speak and they suddenly do this, here's an 80s reference for you. They do the old Max Headroom, and they freeze up on you. That's distracting. Now, I have the attention span of a hyperactive 3-year-old. So that kind of stuff, I'm now laughing at that. I've forgotten what you're telling me. So if you can take those steps, it will help. That's a plus. Okay. Here's another. This is a big deal. I can't tell you how many videos I have watched in the past several months where I became so weary of looking up someone's nose. And the reason is because their camera level, if they're using a computer or whatever, here's what you want to make your attempt to do. Even if it means getting a few books, putting it on your desk, you want to raise that camera level up to eye level. You want it to be up at eye level. There are several things that can happen when you're presenting virtually. You want people to at least have the feeling they know you're not actually looking at them, but they want to have that sense, something about the way we are, our brains, when someone appears to be looking us in the face and the eyes, it helps hold our attention. And I've seen various versions. You have the people with they're holding it down, so we're looking up at them. That's never a flattering view. Or they are leaning forward like this, and they're trying to be sure they're in frame and all of that stuff. And you can really see my lovely quarantine lack of haircut there. So I will back up quickly. But the issue that creates is this subconscious image that you are conveying that you're talking down to them. It's a subconscious thing, but it's there. And again, it's just not always a flattering view. And so if we can get our camera at eye level, big deal. And while I'm talking about that, here's the thing you want to remember. My computer, my laptop, has a little green light. That little green light is my camera. That's telling me my camera's on. So I have had to train myself to look at the little green light. So that is eye contact. The tendency would be for me to do this because I can see Drew on my screen. So my tendency in wanting to make sure I'm talking to him would be to do this. And I would look down and I'm looking at him on the screen. The problem is that's not what he's seeing. He's seeing a whole lot of my forehead right now. So, but if I look up and I'm looking at the little green light, then I'm actually appearing to him to be looking him in the eyes. Does that make sense? I don't want to belabor that, but again, these are things that can really make a difference in your virtual presentation. They need to be put into your virtual presentation toolbox. You need to know these things. They're all preliminaries, things you can take care of ahead of time that will make your presentation better. So even if you just get the basics today, you're going to be a better presenter virtually than you were when you logged on. Okay. So here's a third one. Be mindful of your background. Okay. Now today, I do a lot of videos, so I'm pretty aware of what's behind me, but I always do a quick look to see if for some reason a grandchild or my wife or someone made a pass through my office and moved something. I kind of know what's behind me otherwise. Now, I am in the process of getting a green screen option. Those things were much cheaper, by the way, before the pandemic. I'll just tell you, you could have searched those on Amazon and gotten for about 50 bucks, gotten a great green screen setup. Those things are over 100 bucks now because everybody knows, guess what? Everybody's on Zoom. Boom. That's capitalism, the free market system at work. So anyway, be mindful of your background. You don't want distracting things going on behind you, if at all possible. You want to locate yourself where you're not a heavy traffic pattern behind you, and you don't want distracting items behind you. Now, there's a guy that I follow that I enjoy what he shares. His name is Jon Acuff. He's an author and a speaker. And one of the things he says about Zoom, maybe you're doing it right now, is that if you are sitting in front of a bookcase, I am judging your bookcase. So maybe you're trying to look and see, what does he read? What has this guy read? I wish I could fill that with just books I've written, and you would all be so impressed. But the bottom line is this: I don't want you unnecessarily distracted. So pay attention to your background. Here's another quick one, as we're still talking about basics, right? If you don't go away with anything else today but these basics, you're still going to be better at virtual presentations than you were before. Okay, so this will help you. Here's the other: pay attention. Your lighting and your audio, they matter. They really do. You will see sometimes in company settings, people will recommend, if you're on just a call, like a conference call, and you're working remotely, they will often encourage you, hey, use a headset. But the reason they say that is that it eliminates a lot of ambient room noise. Now, I'm talking to you today. You can probably see it's right there. Can you see that? See that? See that? I'm using a relatively inexpensive USB condenser mic. What I have found is it is a little better than the built-in microphone in my MacBook Pro, which I know is offending some Mac people right now. I know it is. And that's okay. We all have to grow up at some point and realize they're not perfect. They're great, but they're not perfect. So here's the reality for us today. Doing the best we can to present the best audio possible. If you're in a room that's got hardwood floors and hard surfaces, you're going to get echo and ambiance. It's going to make it harder and give people ear fatigue sooner. Put a rug down. Find some place that maybe has carpeting, something that can deaden it. That also is a helpful thing. We don't always have control over those things, but when we do, they can be a big deal. Lighting is another thing. If all I see is a half-lit portion of your face, I'm going to begin thinking, was this guy the Phantom? Was he in the Phantom of the Opera? What's this? It's going to play with my visual imagery of you. So we don't want unnatural light. I mean, we don't want it to be so bright that we're washed out and we're like, or our foreheads are all shining and gleaming, because those are all distractions too. Natural light. I find LED bulbs are awesome. They're really awesome, and a really inexpensive way. If you have a couple of lamps, take the shade off. If it's one of those shades that really reduces light, take the shade off and find a way just to put something in front of that bulb, even if it's something like a pillowcase or a sheet, something that's easily seen through, and that will diffuse that light enough that it won't be harsh, but it will help illuminate you. The other thing is, don't put it right in front of you. If you wear glasses like I do, yeah, a lot of people I see, I'm looking at all kinds of funny reflections in people's glasses on Zoom calls. And lighting and so forth. Now, again, these are all things that people right now understand. They'll be quite forgiving, but only if your content is amazing. If your content isn't amazing, if what you have to say is unimportant, or they don't understand why it matters to them, they're just going to try to enjoy themselves by looking at all the distracting things. So this is something for you to be aware of. So lighting and audio are important. Okay, they're not going to be train wrecks necessarily if you don't have everything just so, and you don't have to go out and spend a ton of money. Trust me, I don't do that. But you can just make some small little investments that can help enhance what you're doing. All right. Here's one final thing I will say with this: be familiar with the platform that you're using. There are many platforms out there. Everything from Zoom, which we're using today. There's WebEx, there's GoToMeeting, there's all kinds of, and then there are high-end products that people are willing to pay for that allow them to do webinars and things of this nature, and all kinds of special features built in. Whatever you're using, I don't care. Use what you're most comfortable with, because that will help. Just be familiar with the platform. And before you use a platform for the very first time, do a test run with somebody. Make sure you can do stuff. If you're going to be sharing a presentation, which we opted not to do today, but we have the ability. I could be sharing my screen and giving you nice little pictures. If you're doing that, be sure you know how to do that stuff. Practice navigating. That eliminates distractions. Okay, basics. Hopefully and here's the thing. I know it's a lot. That's why we put together the PDF, and you'll want to reach out to me so I can send it to you. And this will be a resource that you can refer back to on these basics. Okay, let's start off here. Let me
jump in there, Bill.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Let me jump in there and just say, if you're feeling overwhelmed right now and you want to quit, do not get caught in the perfection gap. So maybe you're thinking, I can't do all those changes. I can't do all those housekeeping things. I have to do it at home, and my kids are in the other room. Put the earbuds in. It'll cut down on the sound. Maybe you don't have lighting. Sit in front of a window and you'll get some natural light, and it'll be better than having nothing at all. Maybe you're bald and it's just going to be shiny off the top of your head. You know, it just is what it is. And so you just got to roll with the punches, right? I know I've broken some of the rules as we're sitting here. I had a gal. I'm in a public area. I'm up at my at Tarleton State University at the school that I attend, and there's some distractions in the background. Find the best possible way to get there, and then go for it. Make your presentation, share your sales pitch, talk to your leadership team, whatever you got to do. Don't let those things stop you from going live. We're obviously not letting it stop us. So, and you're watching it. So,
that's so true.
So anyways,
and to piggyback on that, Drew, I will tell you this: these basics that I'm giving you are something for you to aim at. If you have nothing to aim at, if you don't know what the target is, well, then you're going to embarrass yourself unintentionally. And that nothing discourages us from becoming better at something than embarrassing ourselves, not doing well, feeling poorly about what we did. And so it's important that we have some things that are just helpful. And by the way, all of these things that I listed, I do those every time. I just check those things. I just am aware of them. I just check them. It doesn't take more than a couple of minutes. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a huge, exhausting thing. But if you don't know, you don't know. I made this profound statement one day: we don't know what we don't know until we know. Well, now you know. Okay. So these are things as part of my trainings that I do with people. I 100% agree with Drew. Perfection is not possible. Progress, that's possible. So let's focus on progress and getting better, rather than trying to think, oh gosh, I didn't get that perfectly. My whole presentation now has been flushed. That number one is not true to start with. So anyway, there's some basics for you. Okay.
That's good. So now we're going to jump into your system. And this is really that process that you can formulate what you're going to say, your sales virtual presentation, your presentation to your team. Maybe you were asked by leadership to present an idea of how you're going to pivot and take that next step as an organization. This is a system that you can really go through and formulate your talk, whatever you're going to share, your presentation around this system to deliver an effective presentation, and it comes along with an illustration. So that's what really made it hit home with me. So with that, we're going to jump back over just to you, Bill. Here we go.
Okay. All right, super. Well, I don't know if you can tell by just looking at me on camera, but I'm not a tiny person. I'm not a little bitty person. I enjoy eating. I like to eat out, which has been a challenge during the season we're in right now. But here in the state of Texas, restaurants have been allowed to reopen. And I think it's helpful when certain metaphors help paint a picture for us. And so for this system, I've chosen one, and that is our experience of going for a meal. And if you think about it, the parallels are definitely there, because when we gather publicly or even virtually, it's with the expectation that this is going to be a satisfying and meaningful experience. I'm going to have something beneficial that I'm going to take in that's going to help me function. And so let's think about it. I'll just set it for you that way. Let's go to the restaurant for a moment. And let's think in terms of, I'm going to be presenting today like I am to you, and you've all gathered, you're all seated at your table, you've come into the restaurant, you're here, you saw the subject, you saw what it was, you showed up. Now, when I talk about a system that can really help you be an effective presenter, it begins with this number one thing: know your role. You need to know the role that you're playing in this scenario that I just described. You are not the superstar. You are not the celebrity. You are not necessarily the restaurant owner. You're not even really the chef necessarily, or at least if you are, you're doing dual duty, because hopefully you've prepared what you're going to say before you show up to do it. We'll talk about that in a minute. The issue is, you are the server. You are here to make certain that people receive something nourishing, something enjoyable, something tasty, something satisfying. Those are all words we can use to describe a great presentation. So that's the backdrop that I'm setting for us. But know your role. And part of that is, if you are a server, it's important to know the type of food that's supposed to be served in this particular restaurant. If you are trying to offer some Tex-Mex and people showed up at the restaurant because they thought it was Italian food, you're going to have a disconnect right away. That's a problem. Know your role. You're the server, and you need to be aware, what is the context? What's going on here? I need to understand the genre that I am in. You're not here to offer everything. You're not here to address everything that could be said. You have a specific meal that you are offering. You need to be very, that'll be helpful, by the way. That'll really help you know you don't have to tell everything.
Yeah, and Bill, it reminds me of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and where he says, begin with the end in mind. So you can't cover all the bases. You can't tell them everything you know about everything. So pick exactly what you want them to walk away with, know your role, and deliver that. Deliver that one thing.
Exactly.
Narrow it down.
That's exactly right, Drew. We want to know what it is we're bringing these people. What are we offering them? And so we stay keeping that in our mind. The other thing is, we want to know who our listeners are. We want to know who our patrons are. We want to know as much about them as we can know. And the reason that that is important is that all good presentations have elements of these three things. There are illustrations that we're going to use, explanations that we might need to offer, but very importantly, applications that we want to make. How does this affect you now? How can you use this? How can you apply this? So illustrations, explanations, and applications should be used with any point that is being made. I went to college and was learning to speak, and someone asked, how many points would a good presentation have? And the instructor said, at least one. No presentation should be pointless. I took that to mind. That's good information right there. But you need to know who your listeners are, because you want to tailor your applications and your explanations and your illustrations to who they are, so that they make sense, so that they connect. If you're in a room full of homeschooling moms, then you may not want to use tons of very specific sports references, for example. They may or may not catch on to that. It may not apply. So you get this. I won't belabor this. Bottom line, know who you're talking to, know your audience, know who they are. Be sure that you adjust your illustrations, applications, and explanations for the crowd in front of you. That's virtually as well as publicly. Okay. One other thing under know your role, know your subject. There's nothing worse than having a server come to your table at a restaurant who doesn't know the menu. Or you ask them a question. I don't know. And they have to, they grab the menu from you and they go, I don't know. Let me see here. That's never a good sign, right? I mean, that doesn't boost your confidence that when you actually tell them your order, that they're even going to remember it, much less get it right for you. So know the subject. The first rule of all speaking, communicating, is have something to say. Have something to say. If you've been asked to give a presentation in your office, if you've been asked to give it to your team or to a client, you've been asked to do a presentation, maybe you're doing a training on a particular skill set that your team is trying to develop, and you've learned it, and so they've asked you, hey, teach the rest of us, whatever application, or you are trying to make the pivot from being a public speaker or a motivational speaker. Now you only have virtual opportunities. Then you still need to be sure, know your subject, have something to say. That goes back to what I said earlier. How many points should a good presentation have? At least one. None should be pointless. But I think if we're honest, we've all sat through a few that seemed pointless when we got done. That's not what we want. So know your role. You're there to serve this customer. That's what you're there to do. This is not about your moment to be discovered. This is not about, oh boy, that promotion's coming now. Those are all distracting, unnecessary thought processes when you get up, and they will help you. If you get rid of those, it will help you clear the clutter and stay focused on the task. And at the end of the day, we want to be sure that the people who showed up to listen, this is my desire today, I know it's Drew's desire, that you showed up here today to watch this. You're going to go away going, that was helpful. That was interesting. Hopefully it was mildly entertaining, if not just hilarious. I don't know. Bottom line, you want to go away feeling like that was worth the time I invested. So that's important. Know your subject. Have something to say. Do your due diligence on the front end. Make sure, even if all you're doing is quoting people who know what they're talking about, just do the work and know your subject. The more you know it, the easier it will be for you to present it. So that's the first step in this thing. When we talk about these 6 steps, you need to know your role. Settle that right out from in the front. I am not here to be the superstar. This is not my moment. This is not when I get discovered. None of that. This is, I have a job to do, and that is, I want to present this information in a way that benefits the people who have shown up to listen to it.
That's great. That's great, Bill. And a couple things real quick. I do want to let everybody know that in the description below, we have Bill's email address there. And if you email him, he'll send you the PDF for this entire training where you can use it. You can print it up every time you do a presentation, and you can check off the boxes to make sure that you're covering all of these items when you do your virtual presentations. But to something that Bill said a few moments ago, if you're watching live, go ahead and jump in the chat. If you're watching the replay of this, put in the comments, how committed are you to making the transition and getting better in the area of virtual presentations? On a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you? I think it's very important that we make a decision, and then we really get honest with ourselves about how committed we are about making that actual change. So let us know in the comments below. We want to talk to you and or jump in the chat and tell us there. All right, Bill, keep
All
us
right.
rolling.
Everything we've talked about up until this point is pretty much preliminary. Okay. We talked about these basics that you can take into account. And now we're talking about just knowing your role. This all takes place before you actually start your presentation. Okay. So here we begin. The next 5 things that I'm going to share with you have to do with the actual presentation. And that is this: staying in the metaphor that we've set. Being in a restaurant, you're the server, you're here to deliver a satisfying experience to those who've shown up to listen. Here's the first thing you want to do: set the table. All right. You want to set the table. And by set the table, I basically mean you want to let them know what's on the menu or give them the agenda. That's another way of saying what I'm talking about here, is setting the table. You want to let them know what the purpose of this presentation is. You want to let them know the basic information that you intend to cover, and you want to let them know what to expect. Give them the agenda. Simply put, today, setting the table involved Drew telling you some things, and I chiming in behind him of saying, these are the things we're going to talk about. We want you to increase and up-level your skills in virtual presentations. We're going to talk about a model and steps if you implement them, so forth and so on. You understand where I'm going with that. So set the table. You need to do that right up front. Let people know. It's kind of like the conductor showing up saying, this train is going so-and-so, check your ticket. So if somebody showed up thinking, oh, this is going to be about this, you've clarified right away, this is what we're talking about today. Okay. So set the table. It also helps people if they know what to expect. You've told them what you're going to talk about. They're going to track with you a little more. They're listening. Okay, we're here in this presentation. We've gotten to here. Okay. And it helps people stay with you through to the end. Okay. Here's the second step. So after you set the table, you want to serve up the appetizer. That's a big deal. Now, the purpose of a true appetizer isn't just to give people more food. It's actually to prepare them for what is to come. It is to do something with their palate, awaken their palate, get them to where they're ready to experience what is to come after. And so when I say serve the appetizer, I want you to understand this is the hook. This is your hook. Basically, it answers the question, why should this matter to you? You're basically going to tell them why what you have to say should matter to them. Here's a little freebie. This is a human nature thing. No one changes until it matters to them personally. So if I'm giving information today, if I'm sharing with you all these steps, if I don't help you understand why this should matter, why it's important to you, you're not really going to pay much attention, and you're certainly not going to go the next step of implementing any of the things we talk about. Okay. So serving the appetizer is basically saying, how does this help you? How is this information going to help you? How is it going to do that? What problem will this information solve for you? Those are things you need to understand. This is the appetizer. So as you're doing your presentation, you want to set the table. And then secondly, you want to serve up the appetizer. Tell them why this information is important, why it matters, how it's going to help them, what problem it's going to solve. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not your content. That's not the meat of what you're going to do, but it prepares them like, oh, wow, I'm paying attention. That sounds meaningful to me. Now that can take a little thought, especially if it's just a presentation. If you're doing a financial report, you've been asked to present that. You still need to do it. You need to help people understand, why are we going over these numbers? Because understanding these numbers helps us be better prepared for setting our goals for the next quarter or whatever.
Yeah.
You're basically communicating that this is the problem it solves. This is why it should matter to you. Okay, so we're talking about setting the table. Tell them what you're going to talk about, set it up, then bring the hook. This is why it matters to you. So we've talked about setting the table and serving the appetizer.
And let me say this about the appetizer, just so everybody's clear and kind of understands what we're talking about here. The appetizer, why it's important to you, why is up leveling your virtual presentation skills or learning a virtual presentation system, why is that important? It may be obvious right now, but it's important because the current situation we find ourselves in is this COVID-19 crisis, and different organizations are handling it differently. But I promise you that when this thing all shakes out, there's going to be about half of the world, half of our clients, half of the people that we interact with, half the people we're trying to sell to, that they're going to say, come on into our office, come do a presentation live, do it in person. It's great. We feel good. We're healthy. We're not afraid. We're good. And there's going to be another half that either are afraid to have people come into their office space, or they just recognize that it's more efficient if they do something virtually instead of in person, and they say, hey, we're just going to adopt this technology and we're going to roll with this moving forward. And why it's so important, and then Bill, if you have anything to add to this, but why this is so important is we're in a time of change, and you have to be able to pivot at this moment, because 3 months from now, Bill mentioned this, people aren't going to have grace for you anymore. If you don't adopt these things now, if you don't figure these things out now, they're going to 3 months from now say, well, why are you still kind of feeling your way through this virtual presentation? Why don't you know how to pull up your PowerPoint? Why do I have to sit here for 10 minutes while you're trying to figure out how to log on? Because this is going to be a part of our future reality. So that's why it's important. That's why we're sharing this information with you.
No doubt.
And that's why Bill has this presentation.
Well, and here's one other little factor: cost.
Yeah.
Companies are going to evaluate this technology and this option simply because of cost. Now, it may not change whatever they might pay you if you're a speaker for having you come and do the training, but they save your airline ticket, they save your hotel cost and meals or whatever. So there is savings, and there will be companies who will determine to remain in a virtual mode as a cost saving measure as a result of the pandemic and all that it has created for them in their business. Okay, so this isn't going away. And as Drew said, there's a lot of grace right now. There's a lot of grace. Everyone's adjusting, everyone's learning. But at some point, if you allow the general populace out there in the workplace to become more proficient at these tools than you are, your ability to do a good job as a presenter is going to be greatly diminished. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Why does this matter to you? You want to be better at it. The better at it you are, the more effective you are. And that's, again, remembering what is your role. At the end of the day, it's not to be the superstar, hey, I've been discovered. It's I want to deliver information that is helpful, that is beneficial to the people who invested time to show up and listen. Okay.
Perfect.
I spent a lot of time thinking that way before this. I want to be sure. I've always thought in terms of the investment of man hours. If I had 30 minutes and there were 100 people, I saw that as a whole bunch of man hours time invested. So it better be worth that time, because we don't get time back. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's important. All right.
All right.
We've set the table. We've served the appetizer. And now we want to bring the meal. That is the third thing here, the third step: bring the meal. This is your content. This is the meat of what you want to communicate. The things we've talked about before, the setting of the table, serving the appetizer, those may only take a couple of minutes. That you never want to spend more time setting the table and bringing the appetizer than you do bringing the actual meal. You want them to be timed appropriately. So when Drew and I spoke a week or two ago, however long that was, his time window changed from what he was doing live to when he was going to be presenting as part of a paid gig that he'd been asked to do a training. And instead of having an hour that he could talk about the things he wanted to talk about, he had 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Now that's a big deal. And this is why this training should matter to you, because if you follow this template, it will fit any time window, any time window. You can do all of the things I'm talking about in any time window. Okay. That's a big deal. So if you have an hour, okay, that's an hour. if you have 20 minutes, you can still do a very effective job with your virtual presentation skills if you follow some of these steps. Follow these steps, they'll help you, okay? They transcend the time limits. They can be adjusted and applied. So when I may come back and revisit that later. Drew, if I forget, remind me about how to, maybe give an example of how we press things necessary for time as far as giving, because some people really like to know, how much time do I spend on this step? How much time on this step? How much? And we can just do a hypothetical breakdown of that. So bringing the meal, what does this actually mean? Well, this is really the reason they came. They every now and then people go to a restaurant because they really love the appetizers. But most of the time people are there for what? The meal. The people who show up today to watch this or are watching this recorded right now came because of the meat. They want the content. The appetizers matter. All that stuff is important, but they're here for the content. So that goes back to be sure you know what you are talking about. Be sure you know your subject. This is why they're here. And I will just tell you, make sure that your content, make it these three things. Make it interesting, make it informative, and make it inspiring. Those are three words that you can make sure your content is going to do these things. You want to pique their interest. Hopefully your appetizer, your hook has drawn them in. Oh, wow, I really want to know this. Now be sure that your content lives up to your promise. Be sure that what you're actually talking about is what you told them you were going to talk about. No one likes bait and switch. No one likes clickbait. No one likes any of that, to use the virtual terms there. Clickbait, not bad for an old dude. So the issue is, you don't want to say, here's what's on the menu. Here's what we're going to talk about. And then you go off on a soapbox or you pursue some other rabbit trail and you do not actually cover the topic you told everyone you're going to cover. That's not a quality of a good presentation, okay? And you won't get any repeat customers that way, because you didn't do what you told them you were doing. Be sure your content covers the topic that you said you were going to talk about. Make it interesting to them. That's going to come back to your illustrations, the way you apply it, the way you explain. And by the way, on the word explain, based on who your audience is, that determines how in depth explanations need to be. If you're talking to someone who has never logged on to a computer before, you're going to have to give more detailed explanation. If you were talking to someone who uses a computer every day, that explanation doesn't have to be as in-depth, doesn't have to take as long. Hopefully you're following me here. The issue is you want to make it interesting. The second thing is, it needs to be informative. You want to have a goal. If I'm going to tell you at least one thing today you didn't know, you're going to go out of here. You may not go out of here with 10 things you didn't know, but you're going to go out of here with at least one thing that you did not know that makes your time spent here. That was worth it right there. That was beneficial to me. Anytime we're talking,
to jump on that,
yeah, go ahead.
I do want people, when you walk away today and for the rest of this training, be thinking, what's the one thing that I'm going to take away from this training today, and then I'm going to put into practice? Just one. Is there one thing that you can take away in your prep or in your delivery that is going to up-level your next training, and then do it again for the next one? So jump back into it.
That's an excellent point, Drew. The bottom line is this, and I tell people a lot when I'm doing leadership coaching and executive coaching, I will often just ask them, what is the one thing you're going to do today that will make you a better leader? What's the one thing you're going to do today that moves you one step closer to your goal? That's a basic coaching principle that I employ. And it helps because rather than, here are the 10 things, you have to do these 10 things every day, that can be overwhelming. And it's easy for us then to get discouraged. Hey, just boil it down. What's the one thing? So that's great information, Drew. Thank you. That is important. And so let me jump back on the bring the meal. Let's be interesting. We want it to be interesting. By the way, part of what makes things interesting is relevance. If it's irrelevant, it's hard to keep interesting. Unless you're just a masterful storyteller. I have a friend who's from Brooklyn, and I don't care what he's talking about. I'm always interested just because his stories are so interesting, and often entertaining. So just listening to him, and he'll go off on trails. but I'll listen because it's interesting and he makes it relevant. And that's important for us. We need to be sure what we're talking about is relevant. That's one way we make it interesting. You want it to be informative. We want to give them something that they did not know, or reinforce something they may have already known in a new way so that they go away with added benefit. And then we want it to be inspiring. That goes back to, what problem am I solving? Or why should this matter to me or to the person listening? I want to inspire them to make a change. I want to inspire them to get better. I want to inspire them to implement the information we've just given. If I'm doing a training, then I want them to adopt this new methodology that we now have within the company, whatever. Or if I'm talking about weight loss to a group of people, I want to inspire them to embrace and engage in the process that we describe. Okay. So people need to be inspired. They need to be motivated. And while we could talk well, you know what, if people were really mature, they would, but they're not. People are not really mature, and they're not really thinking this way all the time. People are dealing with the issues of life, and what inspires them is what will move them to do something. So you want your content to be interesting, informative, and inspiring. This is the meal. This is the thing. Focus on that. You need good content. That's bringing the meal. Okay. Now let's move to, what number is this? Is this 4 or 5?
This is number 5.
Here's the 5 step that I want you to consider. And that is, you want to always offer dessert. Always offer dessert. Not everyone wants the dessert. Not everyone's going to order the dessert, but you want to be sure you offer the dessert. Bill, what are you talking about? What is the dessert? Well, this is something that you are going to offer people as a way of giving them a little something extra for investing their time. So what are we doing today? We're offering you a free PDF of this material as a way of saying we appreciate you listening. We are grateful that you tuned in here, and hopefully this was very helpful to you. The truth is, I know if you take these steps and you allow this mindset in your preparation and in your delivery, you are going to be a better virtual presenter. You're going to be much better. You'll be a better speaker in general, but specifically with your virtual presentation skills. So offer the dessert. Maybe it's a free PDF. Maybe it's a checklist of some kind. Maybe it's your slide deck. Maybe you're saying, here, I'm going to shoot you a copy of my slide deck and my notes so people can refer back to it. Some people love taking notes. Other people get distracted taking notes, and they wind up doodling and creating all kinds of interesting art on the paper that they're using or on their device. They're surfing Facebook, they're doing whatever. Having access to the slide deck sometimes in a presentation, if you're using one, very helpful. They're like, okay, great. I can just listen for the content. I can look, but I don't have to do a lot of other mental gymnastics right now. So that's offering dessert. Not everybody will download it, but having it available is a big thing. It helps a lot of people. Maybe it's some other resource. Maybe it's a book you want people to have. Maybe it's a free consultation of some kind that says, hey, I'd be happy to sit and talk with you, and we can talk about this information, set up another time to do this, that, and the other. But you want to offer dessert. If what you have to say is impactful, it's meaningful, it's helpful, it solves a problem, and it should matter to the people that you're talking to, then offering them something a little extra for having spent the time is going to be another way that you go away from the experience feeling more satisfied, that was beneficial, that was a wise investment of my time.
Yeah. And it's that extra added value. So if you're a sales professional, it might be, like you said, a PDF, or, hey, I'm going to go ahead and send you the specs on this product that I'm offering. I'm going to send you a specific proposal about what we discussed today. If you're leading a presentation, it's that slide deck, or it's the bullet points for the decision maker, so that they can really see it in black and white on paper and make that decision effectively. And for us today, it is that PDF that Bill is giving you. Bill's email is the second item in the description below. If you don't know how to get in the description area, Bill, will you go ahead and tell them your email address so they can go, they can write it down real quick and reach out to you?
Absolutely. just email me at Bill, BILL, at thrivingintransition.org. I know it's long. I apologize. Bill at thrivingintransition.org. If you'll send me an email, you don't have to say much in the email. Just say, watch you on YouTube, want the PDF, or send me the PDF, anything like that. And I will be certain that I get that into your inbox just as quickly as I can.
Perfect. I want everybody to get that. Okay. Are we on number 6, the final step in the system?
We're about to get to number 6. Before we get to number 6, I want to do that little time thing that we talked about earlier. And that is, when I heard Drew had an hour in his live deal that he covered. And I must have taken 6-7 pages of notes. I take notes, and these weren't in critiques. I was taking note on his content. I was benefiting from what he had to say. I want to make that clear. I didn't take 6 pages of notes.
I wasn't giving away a PDF,
so yeah. So anyway, I took a lot of notes, and that, by the way, that was one of the things that helps me with the attention span of a hyperactive 3-year-old. If I take notes, it really helps me stay engaged. So you do whatever you have to do to stay engaged. But he only had 20 minutes the next day. So when I shared these steps with him and gave him this context and this scenario as a way of thinking about what he was going to be doing, he said, okay, I've got 20 minutes. Well, if you think about setting the table and serving the appetizer, bringing the meal, and offering dessert, you got all those things to do in 20 minutes. Do you need to think in terms? Obviously, the most important thing you're going to do is what? Bring the meal. You want them to get the content. So you don't want to spend 15 minutes setting the table and bringing the appetizer and leave yourself with 5 minutes to bring the content. I've watched a lot of webinars that do that to me, and it annoys me, and I never go back. I never go back. It's disproportionate. They spend so much time telling me what they're going to tell me, and only a very little time telling me what they said they were going to tell me. That's a waste of my time. And if anything is a takeaway here today, you need to understand that in virtual presenting, people can just click off.
Mm-hmm.
They can just close it out. They can leave it. And you don't want that happening to you. So use your time well. So let's say we have a 20-minute window, Drew. Let's say we have the same 20-minute window to do this that you had. Then I think you and I actually talked about this. We actually broke this down just a little bit. Well, you want to make no more than 5 minutes setting the table and bringing the appetizer. You don't want to use any more than 5 minutes to do those things. So if you break it down and say, I'm going to only spend 2 minutes, I'm going to spend 2 minutes setting the table, giving them the agenda, here's the menu, here's what we're going to cover, and I'm going to spend 3 minutes helping them understand this is why it should matter to you, this is how it's going to help you, this is the problem it solves for you. Then I'm going to give myself at least 10 minutes of that 20 bringing the meal. I'm going to give them a full 10 of that. Maybe I'm going to give them 12, right? So you can break this down, but maybe we're going to give them 12 minutes of that. So now how much time have we used? Well, we've used 5 and 12. What's it, 17? So we've used 17. We have 3 minutes left to do the next 2 things. It doesn't take a long time to offer your dessert, but you want to do it. Don't leave it off. It's easy to do. And I can tell you, and Drew and I've talked about this, as public speakers, as public presenters, trainers, and coaches, the tendency is to be so focused on the content, we leave off the offer. Mm-hmm. We forget to make the offer. But you don't want to rob them of that little extra for having invested time. So just leave yourself a little window. But the majority, the biggest block of time in your window, whatever size it is, needs to be on bringing the meal. Okay? Focus on the content.
Yeah, and something that I did and I've done before when I have a very tight timeline, and I would encourage you to do this, is I take my entire talk and the notes that I have for that and the different chunks of information that I'm giving, and I put a number of minutes next to them. 2 minutes for this part, 3 minutes for this part, 5 minutes for that part. And then if I end up with 25 minutes at the end, I've got to go through and cut out 5 more minutes. And so I go back through, and until I have it at 20 or 18 to 20 minutes, And when you do that, you're going to have a better chance of getting there. And then preparation. I did the entire talk in 20 minutes before I went for the client and delivered it.
Yep.
So that preparation is going to increase your confidence, and it's also going to just solidify in your mind how you can get that entire talk down. And it all starts with that beginning part of beginning with the end in mind. Know what your role is. Know what you are planning to deliver that day. If you're clear on that, it makes it much easier to cut out different portions of your talk, because you go, you know what? That is not as focused on what I'm really trying to get at as the rest of it. So I'm going to remove that for now. And that can be part of a longer talk, like now, right? An hour long live. But if Bill had 20 minutes to deliver this, I'm telling you, I wouldn't be here jumping in and giving my 2 cents or asking questions. He would just get right to the information and deliver it in that way. And so, anyways, if you do the first steps, the timeline is going to come in much easier.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. If you just want me to talk based on things I know, and I have an hour, I can do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to talk for 10 minutes, I'm going to need some time. I've got to really prepare, right? So if you just want to pick my brain, well, we don't have a time limit on that. Just go ahead. I'll tell you all kinds of stuff. But if we need to do something within a time constraint, and even though I've been a public speaker for over 40 years, and I've been doing virtual presenting for at least the last 5 to 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had to learn and what worked, what doesn't work, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and search ways to improve. I use this, by the way. I use this template. I didn't just formulate it. This is how I think. I actually use these things to help me do a better job in my presentations, and especially my virtual presentations. So I've had to work on those skills. Being live, you get feedback, right? You have lots of feedback. The only feedback you get in a virtual presentation is if someone happens to say something in the chat. Or we don't get those immediate visual clues of whether anybody's with us, they've got it, they understand, they're buying in. It's different. So it's a different skill set. You have to kind of get used to it. It can be a little odd. But let me give you the final thing here. Okay. This is really important. Tell them what you want them to do next. Tell them their next steps. This is a big deal. Don't leave this one off. Never assume that people intuitively know what to do with what you've just given them. Don't presume that if you've just done an hour-long training on virtual presentations and upping your virtual presentation skills, that people automatically know what their next steps are. Tell them. What does your server usually do right at the end of the meal? Here's your check. Here's how you can pay, whatever. And then they want to tell you something. Hey, have a great day and come back and see us. They're going to tell you what they hope you will do. So I think that's very important when we do virtual presentations. I want to tell you what to do next. And the thing I would tell you today, what to do next, is send me an email to bill@thrivingandtransition.org and say, send me the PDF, and I will do that. That's your next step. If nothing else, that's a takeaway from today that you can refer back to and you can look at when you're preparing for your next virtual presentation.
It's fantastic.
And that's important. Tell them what to do next. Maybe it's subscribe to your YouTube channel, which is what Drew needs to tell everyone when he does something like this. He needs to say, here's what I want you to do now. Subscribe, click subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more information like this. Maybe you're going to say bookmark my website and visit it regularly. Or you're going to say buy my book. Or you're going to say book a training. Have me come in, speak to a broader group of people, whatever. But you tell them what you want them to do next. If you've just done a training on a particular app or use of something within your company or organization, or if you've presented to a customer, you want to tell them, here's what to do next. Here's your next step. Don't leave that off. Now, what I want to do is circle back, and I want to give us just encapsulate the things we talked about. If you want to be reminded of the basics, get the PDF. Here are the steps. Know your role. You're the server. You're here to deliver a satisfying and beneficial meal to the customers who've shown up for this virtual presentation. Know your role. Set the table. You want to tell them what the purpose of this is. You want them to know what information that's going to be covered, and you want to let them know kind of what to expect. You're going to give them the menu or the agenda. You want to, number 3, serve up the appetizer. This is your hook. This is where you answer the question, why should this matter to me? You need to do that. Let them know why this should matter to them and how it will help them and what problem they have that it will solve. Then number 4, bring the meal. You want to bring it. Bring the content. You know this stuff. You've prepared. This is stuff you've worked on. You've really spent some time. You know your subject, and you're now going to bring the meal. You're going to make it interesting. You're going to make it informative, and you're going to make it inspiring. Then you want to be sure you always want to offer dessert. That's number 5. Offer dessert. What are you going to give them that's something a little extra, some added value for them having invested their time of listening to this presentation? Whether they take advantage of it or not, they still appreciate that you thought to do it. And that's a big deal. So make sure you offer dessert. That could be your free PDF like it is here today, bill@thrivingintransition.org. Send me the PDF. That's that. And then you could just, whatever you're going to offer. The 6th and final, I just gave you 10, didn't I? I just said the 6th, that's not right. The 6th, there, let's get the visuals correct. That's a whole different training. Tell them what to do next. Tell them what their next steps are. That is a big deal, and it helps round out the entire experience. If you will take this little template, if you will take these steps and apply them towards your next virtual presentation, they will help you do a better job in your presentations virtually. It will help you hold attention. It will help you deliver value, and people, especially right now, appreciate and remember value.
So good. That's so good. And there really are, like Bill said, there's 2 steps that you can take today. 1, download the PDF so that you can get all the information about how to really step-by-step checklist your presentations, your virtual presentations moving forward. And then number 2, if you found value in this channel and in this interview, then like the video, subscribe to the channel so you can be notified, hit the bell notification so you can be notified about more videos like this. Every Wednesday, I have a new video that comes out. And then right now for the next 20 weeks, I have a new video coming out on Fridays that is all about sales. So my channel, Influence Trainer, is about increasing your influence in the marketplace. So if you have something to say, something to sell, or something significant that you want to do, then you've got to increase your influence. And that's what this channel is all about. And so we bring interviews of experts in their field like Bill, or I have content around increasing your influence. And so communication is one of the 7 essential qualities of an influential person. And so you've got to make sure, if you want to increase your influence, that you're working on your communication skills, and especially right now, your virtual presentation skills. So thank you so much for watching. Bill, thank you so much for sharing this valuable content.
Enjoy
it. And we will definitely be interviewing you again in the future and learning some more from you. So with that, we're going to go out. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you all for listening in and watching, and we'll talk to you soon.